Okay, Julia, I'll let you introduce the start of this gathering here.
Sure. Well, I don't know much about what these people are going to talk about, but this is the Colorado Energy Office, and I contacted them because it looks like they have a lot of really interesting EV programs and things like that. So and things like that don't often get disseminated to the EV public. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to hear what they have to offer.
So I guess with that, Ed, you can, or Zahra, whichever, can take it away.
Thank you, guys. Good morning, and thank you all for having us. My name is Ed Pierce, Program Manager with the Transportation Team at the Colorado Energy Office. We are here today to present a few current and upcoming Colorado Energy Office transportation programs. So having said that, I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Yep, go ahead.
And can you guys see that okay?
Yes. Yep.
Great. So this presentation, again, it covers a number of upcoming and present transportation programs. We'll be sharing a PDF of our slide deck after the presentation today. So having said that, we'll start with a preview of an upcoming program named Vehicle Exchange Colorado. So Vehicle Exchange Colorado is also abbreviated as VXC. You are going to hear me refer to this program as VXC throughout this presentation. So starting with an overview of Vehicle Exchange Colorado, or VXC, this is a program that is funded through the Community Access Enterprise. That is something that was created by Senate Bill 21260. It is a state-funded program. It will be a statewide point-of-sale rebate program to remove high-emitting vehicles from the road and replace them with battery electric vehicles, also known as BEVs, and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, also known as PHEVs. The program is targeted to launch during summer 2023. Tentatively speaking, we are looking at a July 2023 launch, but that is still TBD. So before we get into VXC eligibility requirements, I will point out that all VXC program elements are only proposed at this time. The program design for VXC will be finalized in the coming months. So beginning with at the top of this slide here, a VXC program participant must be a resident of Colorado, income qualified. It is an income qualified program, and have their high emitting vehicle recycled following their BEV or PHEV purchase or lease. For the income eligibility requirements, a participant must meet at least one of the following income criteria. So the household income needs to be below 80% of the area median income, also known as AMI. So AMI varies by county. For example, it is one set of income amounts for Denver County, but another set of income amounts for Boulder County. We've got the HUD website for AMI linked on this slide, which again, we'll share after today's presentation. That link contains a search engine, which you can use to look up your local AMI if you would like to do so at some point. So in lieu of the household income being below 80% of the AMI, a participant can be enrolled in any number of income qualified programs. We'll have a detailed list for that in the coming months. So he, she, or they would only need to meet one of those income criteria. And then with the high emitting vehicle eligibility requirements, the vehicle must meet all of the following criteria. The vehicle needs to be registered under the participant's name with the Colorado DMV for at least 1 year. The vehicle title must be issued to the participant, so there cannot be a lien on the title. The vehicle needs to be operational, and use gasoline or diesel as fuel. Lastly, the vehicle needs to be model year 2011 or older, or fail a Colorado emissions test, in which case the model year is no longer required. Model year 2011, we selected for a number of reasons. As you may be aware, the average age of a light-duty vehicle in the US is 12 years old, which is consistent with this model year requirement. Also, for light-duty vehicles, there is a noticeable increase in miles per gallon between model year 2011 and model year 2012. So again, that is how we fell on that year. So we'll now discuss BXC rebate amounts and details. Still waking up here. The rebate amounts for BXC are still being finalized. We've got tentative amounts for both new and used BEVs and PHEVs. For a new BEV or PHEV purchase or lease, it is a $6,000 rebate. The lease term must be a minimum of 2 years. For a used BEV or PHEV purchase or lease, it is a $4,000 rebate. The lease term must be a minimum of 2 years. Participants can receive a rebate on any new or used BEV or PHEV purchase or lease that has a maximum MSRP or purchase price of $50,000. We'll now pivot to other EV rebate programs and tax credits offered in Colorado. So there are 2 income qualified EV rebate programs in Colorado that are currently available through utility companies. No vehicle recycling is required for either rebate program. So that's an important distinction between our program and the utility company rebate programs. With Xcel Energy, it is a $5,500 rebate for a new BEV or PHEV purchase or lease, and it is a $3,000 rebate for used BEV or PHEV purchase or lease. The lease term needs to be at least 2 years, same as VXC. Black Hills Energy, they have the same rebate amounts as Xcel Energy for both new and used BEV and PHEV purchases. One distinction between Black Hills Energy and Xcel Energy for their EV rebate programs is the Black Hills Energy one is for purchases only, so it is not applicable to leases. Only the Xcel Energy program is, as far as the utility company EV rebate programs are concerned. We've got the Xcel Energy EV rebate program linked on this slide, and the Black Hills Energy EV rebate program is not currently on their website. However, I have been told by Black Hills Energy, if anyone is interested in learning more about their EV rebate program, they have an email address here linked on the slide, readyev@blackhillscorp.com. And they told me that they can start working with potential participants now, if anyone is interested. Something else I want to point out with these utility company rebate programs before I move on to tax credits is you need to be a customer for the respective companies for their respective rebate programs. So if you're not an Xcel Energy customer, as an example, you would not be eligible to participate in the Xcel Energy EV rebate program. As far as tax credits are concerned, the state tax credit does not apply to used BEVs or PHEVs at this time. So the state tax credit for EVs is only applicable to new BEVs or PHEVs. It is a $2,000 state tax credit for a new BEV or PHEV light duty passenger vehicle purchase, and is a $1,500 state tax credit for a 2-year or longer BEV or PHEV light duty passenger vehicle lease. The federal tax credit is a bit more nuanced. I'm sure the people on this call are familiar with it, but real high level, for new vehicles for the federal tax credit, it is up to $7,500 for the purchase of a qualifying new BEV, PHEV, or fuel cell electric vehicle, also known as an FCEV. And for used vehicles, it is up to $4,000 for the purchase of a pre-owned BEV, PHEV, or FCEV. We'll now talk about proposed stacking possibilities between the different EV rebate programs and tax credits. Something I'll point out right now, right off the bat, is the utility company rebates cannot be combined with the EV state tax credits at this time. So you will notice there is no stacking possibility between the utility company rebate programs and the state tax credit here. So looking at this table, you can see there is a wide range of stacking possibilities. Starting with the lowest, Vehicle Exchange Colorado plus the state tax credit, you would be looking at potentially up to $8,000. If you go the route of Vehicle Exchange Colorado plus one of the utility company EV rebate programs that I described on the previous slide, it is potentially up to $11,500. If you only pursue a Vehicle Exchange Colorado EV rebate program plus the federal tax credit, potentially up to $13,500. Vehicle Exchange Colorado plus the federal tax credit plus the state tax credit would be potentially up to $15,500. And then the maximum proposed stacking possibility would be Vehicle Exchange Colorado plus Black Hills Energy or Xcel Energy plus the federal tax credit. And that is potentially up to $19,000 in financial incentives. So that concludes the VXC portion of this presentation. Before we move on to the Charge Ahead Colorado program, does anyone have any questions regarding VXC? Any comments, feedback? There's no such thing as a dumb question, so please fire away.
Well, I would like to know what is the recycle car? I mean, how do you recycle your car, or how do you recycle my car if I were to have a car like that?
Great question. So with this program, the participant, once he, she, or they purchase or lease their EV and receive their EV, they would turn in their high emitting vehicle to that local dealership. It'll be a participating dealership in our network. And then the dealership will coordinate that with us to have the vehicle recycled. The idea being we want to make this as easy as possible for the program participant, so they would not be involved with the vehicle recycling other than turning over their vehicle and title.
Okay.
I have a question that maybe you said this when I walked away to get more coffee, but to get the federal rebate, do you have to have that much of a tax liability? Is it just up to your maximum tax liability or $7,500?
Yeah, great question. The tax liability is a factor, yes. I do want to preface this by saying, for clarity, for transparency, we are not tax professionals. So There's only so much I want to get into the tax credits since we are still understanding all of those nuances ourselves. But yes, tax liability is a factor.
Yeah, when I bought my Tesla for in 2018, I qualified, you could still get the 7,500, but I only had 6,800 of tax liability. So I ended up getting 68 something, which is pretty good still, but I think so. If it hasn't changed, I would say that's probably the case.
There will be, that's my understanding as well. There will be new guidance being issued, I believe, next month about the federal EV tax credits. So there'll be some updated language there that will be publicly available, but that is consistent with my understanding, yes.
And the Colorado or the federal ones can be repeats. I mean, like if I bought a new EV, even though I've had 3, I could still get these credits again. Except for the one where you have to recycle your gas car.
So for clarity, this program, Vehicle Exchange Colorado, it is a rebate program. It is not a tax credit program. It's going back to this slide here. These are only potential combinations or stacking, as we call it. So it could be combined, that the rebate program with the tax credit, but any specific tax credit questions, I would recommend talking with a tax professional. I don't want to give incorrect information about that.
So I take it, since you didn't mention it, that the plug-in hybrids, there's no like minimum battery size to qualify?
For Vehicle Exchange Colorado?
Yeah.
Correct. As long as it's a battery electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, it would qualify for this program.
I don't own a EV yet, and all of this is just gobbledygook to me. I am like, okay, you're talking to mid-century modern here. I love the 21st century, and I wanted a Mustang Mach-E, but I learned on a Mustang. A 68 Mustang stick. So my forever car was going to be a Mustang in the end. I don't like the big screen on it, but I'm looking for something I can afford because I'm retired and I'm 70. So I know that the batteries last for 10 more years. So this is going to be my forever car, and I'm clueless on these rebates and these tax credits and these stacking things. That is there some EV that you get more on than the other? And because I'm retired and I'm not at 80% below the level.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback and questions. One thing I want to touch on with electric vehicle batteries, as you may or may not be aware, federal law requires automakers to keep their EV batteries under warranty for at least 8 years or 100,000 miles. And many EV batteries are now made to last 200,000 to 300,000 miles. I know as we've been recently doing presentations for this program, that is a question that often comes up about EV batteries. Regarding the tax credits, I know there's a lot of questions about this, and I completely understand. We'll be concluding the presentation later on with some, we have a website called EVco, and it has a lot of tax credit information that gets much more into the weeds than I have during this presentation. It also has a really helpful infographic, which we have linked on the slide as well. And I would highly recommend that anyone that has questions about the tax credit or wants to learn more, check out that resource and let us know if you have any questions after. But I believe that will answer a lot of tax credit questions on this call, or at least I hope it will. So,
Okay, thanks.
Looks like we have
I have a question.
one question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kamala.
Okay. So my question is that it says that these are all proposed. What's the time frame on when you think this will get approved or adjusted or whatever?
yeah, excellent question as well. We are tentatively looking at a July 2023 launch.
Right.
So prior to that launch, in the weeks leading up to that launch, we will have a website. We actually do have a website now. There's just not much information on it at the moment, but the landing page will be updated with all of the information that you asked about and much more. We'll have an FAQ. We'll have a map of the authorized dealerships in our network. We'll have a link for the online application portal that people will apply to. We'll have information, more information about the income eligibility requirements, and everything we hope will be as clear as possible. And so to answer your question, it will be should be early summer that you'll see all of that information on our website.
So follow up, because it's July, does this mean that if someone is shopping now for an EV, they should maybe, and they would qualify for all of this, otherwise they should hold off? Or is there like a backwards compatible, like, can you backdate the application or something, right? So let's say someone buys something in April, can they then still apply for the vehicle exchange credits or whatever in July?
Very good question. At this time, that is still TBD.
Okay.
What I can say for sure is it will be a point of sale rebate program. So once it launches, if anyone is looking for an EV at that time and fulfills the income eligibility requirements and the high emitting vehicle eligibility requirements, he, she, or they would have no issue. But in terms of post-sale rebates, to your question, that's still being determined.
Okay, thank you.
So that means hold off until like July?
We are not advising anyone to hold off, or that is definitely at your discretion. But for the program, we are looking at a July, knock on wood, July 2023 launch.
It may take that long for me to find my forever vehicle. We'll see.
I will say, as I'm sure you're aware, and the others on this call, there are often wait lists for electric vehicles. I understand these wait lists can range anywhere from several months to multiple years, I've been told, from people that I've interviewed for this program. So again, we are not advising you either way, but yeah, that is currently where we're at with the program.
Thanks.
Before I hand it over to my colleague Zahra, are there any other questions? Okay, Zahra, I will hand it off to you.
Oh, thanks. So with a program like VXC launching and with our goal of hitting 940,000 electric vehicles by 2030 in Colorado, the question of charging is going to come up a lot, especially, as we have more vehicles on the road. People are going to feel a little anxious of where to, charge their vehicle, especially since majority of the state, not majority, but about half of the state lives in multifamily housing. Those options can be very limiting. And so we have a program called Charge Ahead Colorado. This is one of our few infrastructure grant programs in office. Oh yeah, Ed, you're the captain of this slide deck. Next slide, please. So Charge Ahead Colorado is one of our grant programs. It provides funding for community-based level 2 and DC fast charging throughout the state. And so originally this was a partnership between our office and the Regional Air Quality Council, or the RAC. It's been around for about 8-9 years at this point. So it's our longest running grant program in the state for charging. It has been divided where the RAC would fully fund, or not fully fund, but they would provide funding in the 7-county Denver metro area. And then our office would fund outside of that. But as of last March, we are now the full administrators of this program, as the RAC has now exhausted their funding. This uses state funding. One of the sources is the EV fund, which is the registrations for your electric vehicle through the DMV. We also use Volkswagen settlement funds as well, if you're familiar with the whole fiasco. But yeah, so to date, this program has funded over 2,000 stations throughout the state. So next slide, please. So now, as this question of, these, how much are these projects going to cost? Charging station projects are very, very expensive. And so we want to make sure that this program is accessible to all communities. And so some of the strategies that we adopted starting October 2022 were a result of the EV equity study that our office conducted and was released last year. If you would like to read that study, it is very lengthy, but a lot of great information on, how do we close the gap, not just in charging, but in electric vehicle access. I highly recommend reading it. It's on our website, but always happy to pass along the document. But this study really, set the stage for some of the strategies that we want to adopt into this program and refine it. So this includes increased funding. And so we decided to adopt different incentives and adders to what we currently had. We also reduced the match requirements for this grant because currently our office can fund up to 80%. And the applicant would provide a 20% match. And so we reduced that for some eligible projects. We also decided to simplify the application process for these lower cost and high priority projects due to the fact that this program operates 3 times a year. Some projects are like multifamily workplace are some of the biggest priorities for the state. So we introduced a new rolling application for multifamily housing workplaces if they're installing 3 level 2 stations or less. We also included preferential scoring during the valuation, as this program is incredibly competitive. We are receiving 3 to 4 times the amount of funding requests to our available budget. We actually closed a round yesterday. So if any of your colleagues or you applied, you'll hear back from us in 60 days. But with that, we also want to, conduct more, education and outreach. So folks are aware, about EVs and EV charging and, what they can do for their organization or property. And so we now hired an EV equity advisor in addition to the current work that we do with our Recharge Colorado program. And if you have not heard Recharge, I'll talk more about it, but Recharge is our free coaching program for all things EV and EV charging. Cool. So on the left was our previous incentive chart. So, level 2s, if it was fleet, 6,000 per dual port station. 9,000 for, you know, everything else, non-fleet. And then we would have incentives for both DC fast charging, 35,000 or up to 50. And so to make sure that we are, you know, expanding, you know, funding efforts and, you know, making sure that we're acknowledging, you know, the increasing technology types that are coming onto the market, we included, it should actually get rid of that level 2, but essentially a 19 to 25 kilowatt charger. We decided to include a new incentive for that instead of grouping it in with that original just 9,000. And so folks can now receive up to $12,500 for that. In addition to those incentives, we introduced the income qualified incentive for multifamily housing. And this includes the increased match. So their match reduces from 20 to 10%, and they would receive an extra $2,500 to that 9,000. In addition to that incentive, we also introduced the disproportionately impacted community eligibility. So if you are within what is called a disproportionately impacted community, or DI, you would receive an additional $1,000 to your request, and we would increase the match on our end. So just more about the eligibility for DI and income qualified. So there was a couple of different definitions throughout the state of what it means to be disproportionately impacted. So Ed mentioned Senate Bill 21260 describes folks that are low income, faces history of environmental barriers, pollution. And so we decided to develop an an enhanced incentive screening tool in order to determine eligibility based on address. And so this includes 21260 definition, as well as NEVI from the IRA, EnviroScreen, which is a tool built by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, transportation equity communities. This is from our EV equity study, as well as tribal lands. And so to make sure that this adder is getting to communities that primarily serve the public, we created qualifying entity types for this. And so this includes libraries, community centers, rec centers, nonprofits, schools, places of worship, and as well as multifamily that is income qualified. For the income qualified adder, in order to determine eligibility, we want them to, we want to make sure that they are, meeting established programs such as housing choice vouchers, low income public housing, those of that nature, and making sure that at least 66% of the tenants are at 80% area median income or less. To make sure, that, the cost of these projects are also being, reduced, because they are very costly. This grant you can stack it with available utility rebates. And so considering, the total project cost, whatever is taken off the top using a rebate, then we will go ahead and, fund up to whatever is remaining. Cool. This is just the mapping tool that I mentioned, or enhanced incentive screening tool. So these are just some screenshots, and there's a hyperlink in there, but I'm happy to share the link as well. And so essentially you just plug in your address and it will tell you yes or no if this area is DI eligible. Please note that even if the organization falls into, what is shaded blue or says yes, we have to make sure that it still is a qualifying entity type that is serving the community. Great, next slide, please. Great, so how to apply. So as I mentioned, our January round closed yesterday at 5 p.m. But we have 2 other rounds in the year, also in May and October for the standard application. This is an online application. And unfortunately, there's no save and continue button. So we always recommend folks utilize the Word formatted application that is on our website, so you can draft your answers, share amongst your team if you're working with board or, leasing management or, developer, just to get insight, on some of the answers to the questions. And then as well, so this takes 60 days to review and provide notifications from the close of the application in any of these 3 rounds during the year. But with the short application, it's the rolling application, this is reviewed bi-weekly. And again, this is for workplaces or multifamily housing communities applying for 3 or fewer level 2 charging stations. We do introduce a question and answer period. And that is during the middle of our standard application rounds in January, May, or in October. So you can submit questions and we will post them online to our website. And we also updated our application guide to reflect the changes that we've made to the program, as well as what the program objectives are, funding amounts, requirements such as accessible design, as we require that charging stations, one of the stalls must have accessible design incorporated into the plans. Does not mean ADA only. It just means that for any EV driver, we want to be sure that we can accommodate any vehicle and disability type. And one important thing to note is that this is a reimbursement-based grant. And so you will, conduct your project, pay in full, and then you will submit your reimbursement documentation to us to prove that project's completed. These requirements were fulfilled per the application guide, and we will reimburse you. Next slide, please. So we introduced office hours because there's a lot of questions, especially for folks that are in DI communities or income qualified projects. This might be the first time someone is doing a project like this. It can be very jarring. So we introduced one Thursday a month where we will take questions. You can schedule with myself or my colleague Matt Lerman. And we also encourage that if these are large scale projects or fast charging, to please reach out due to the competitive nature of the program. But in addition to those office hours, we have our recharge coaches. They do a fantastic job. They honestly are the backbone of this program. A lot of our applicants work with them. But just want to note that working with recharge coach is not a guarantee that you will be funded because it is a competitive program. But they're very knowledgeable, not just in our grant programs, but in utility rebates and programs. They also host ride and drive events. They can provide, just general EV and EV charging questions, as well as technical support, and, let you know about any other funding opportunities that are available throughout the state. Next slide, please. Cool. This is just a map of recharge coaches with their contact information on the side. So it's divided into 5 regions. And each region has a couple of coaches, but these are the main ones that you can reach out to. I will note on Forecourt, Lori Dixon, she does not have an extension. So there's no, don't feel free to plug in 110. I think there's one more slide. Awesome. So in addition to Charge Ahead, we're also introducing a new charging infrastructure program that's headed by Matt Lerman, who I mentioned earlier. This is our medium and heavy duty charging program. I think we are changing this title though. I think it's going to be more of a fleet program at this point. It will be launching in the second quarter, so in April. Essentially what this program will do is it's going to meet the demand that Charge Ahead can't. And so Charge Ahead will be able to prioritize more, community-based charging. And so fleet will be a more appropriate option for medium and heavy duty. And in addition to that, there is also, so one of our enterprises, the Clean Fleet Enterprise, also has some upcoming incentives and programs that they'll be rolling out, but more to come on that. And I think one more slide. Oh, no, that's it. Okay, great.
I want to say that I am a coach and through Drive Clean Colorado. And if anyone else wants to do that, I'll put, you can contact Bonnie Trowbridge, and I'll put her email in the chat.
Well, so I have a
Okay.
question. There used to be funding for replacing broken or outdated charging stations. Is that no longer part of Charge Ahead Colorado?
Nope, it is still it's still part of Charge Ahead Colorado. So yeah, feel free to apply if your charger is broken or underperforming. It's only limited to level 2s though. We will not fund any broken or outdated fast charging.
Okay. Great, thank you.
I've got a question about the charging system. The federal funding, the chargers need to be 97% effective to get the federal money for the chargers. And my question is how do you certify that performance level? And, you know, there's some question that a lot of the charging stations are not functioning properly or that they're underperforming. So are you encouraging this, any kind of testing of charging systems in order to receive funding, or how does that work?
Right. So I'm not sure on the federal side, but through our program, we require that all stations need to have a warranty of up to 5 years because we have this issue throughout the state that chargers are down. So this way, you know, this will incentivize folks, you know, to take care of these charging stations because they paid for that warranty. But we also face this question of there's just not enough folks, you know, and especially out in rural communities that have, you know, the knowledge to take care of these stations. That is, you know, a knowledge and workforce gap. So our office with CDOT has introduced a new zero emission vehicle workforce development subgroup through the Colorado Electric Vehicle Coalition. And so I think there are some folks on there from like Pueblo Community College, few community colleges in the Denver metro that are introducing courses, you know, for charging station maintenance. And so that way, you know, in addition to, you know, having this warranty through the program, we're also making sure that there is a workforce available, you know, to tackle that issue of maintenance.
Does the state have any influence over the federal policies for these chargers and funding? Can you have any input into ensuring these chargers are working correctly?
Good question. Not to my knowledge. Could ask around for you, Craig, though. It would be interesting to see if there is some influence statewide on what is happening federally.
Thanks.
Craig, why do you say that PlugShare is now a less reliable source of information? What's happening?
Well, they were bought out by Electrify America.
Mm-hmm.
And people have been reporting that PlugShare is inaccurate as to how well those chargers are working. So they'll go into PlugShare and look.
Do
and
they
it says,
still allow users to comment and leave?
They do, but a lot of times the chargers are shown as being operational. People go to the charger and find out they're down. So they're not updating the information soon enough. So that's very frustrating for people that need to get a charge. They go to the station, says it's available, and it's not working.
And I also wondered about your comment about Europe and hybrids and plug-in hybrids. They fail to function. Did you say fail to perform? What does that mean?
Well, a lot of people are buying plug-in hybrids and then not plugging them in. So they get rebates and tax money back, but they end up ignoring the plug-in portion, just drive on the gasoline. So they're not really saving, they're not really doing the job. So a lot of the European countries are saying we're no longer going to give incentives to plug-in hybrids.
Wow, that surprises me. I can't imagine why anybody would do that.
What's
Yeah, I mean,
that?
I think the research they did mostly in Europe found some of the estimates actually found that plug-in hybrids were worse than complete gas cars as far as emissions. And it was partly people weren't plugging them in, they got lazy or they didn't have any intention, they just wanted the rebate. And then also some of them, I don't know how many, have something where in order to get kind of extra oomph when you're on your battery, the gas engine will kick in, and that produces a whole bunch of like sudden carbon emissions. So that, kind of defeats the carbon, the lack of carbon emissions when you're running your battery.
Oh, interesting. Do we have time for another question? It's not really about this, but is there a problem, Craig or Julia, since you're with all this stuff getting cut and stolen? Because I went to park in the cultural arts thing a few months ago and the chargers were both cut off. And the guy at the booth said, oh yeah, they just steal them for the copper or whatever, I don't know. Is that a big problem around the country?
I mean, I think it is. I mean, I've seen it as a problem, and I kind of suspect it's only going to get worse as sort of the message spreads that you can, well, two things, the message spreads that you can do this. And then secondly, I think copper is probably going to get really expensive because it's really the only form. I mean, aluminum's just too heavy. The only form of, the only mineral you can use for a lot of this high voltage stuff, which EVs have a lot of. So I suspect it's going to get worse, but I can't predict the future.
Wow.
I mean, I think it was, what did I see in, I think Japan or someplace had this interesting, cool system where they had the light pole chargers, which I think is a great idea because electricity is right there. But the chargers were like way high on the light pole. And so if you went and did whatever you did to say, I want to use this charger, it would kind of come down, the charger would come down. So that way nobody could get at them unless they were actually using them.
Oh, cool.
I mean, it might help to have cameras installed around the chargers that are at risk so they can maybe catch some of these guys.
So I had I don't know whether you really have a response to this, but I just wanted to say that there's sort of I've seen a controversy on like social media and people's experiences and stuff. You were talking about the American Disabilities Act. And there's kind of a controversy where a lot of people with disabilities or even people who just don't have great upper body strength have a hard time with the CCS chargers as opposed to the Tesla chargers, because the CCS ones are big. They've got big cords, so especially in the winter they get very stiff, and then they have to be placed exactly right, as opposed to the Tesla one where you can kind of like jam it, in the approximate location and it kind of like moves itself in. So I don't think you really have a response to that, but I just kind of wanted to bring it up. I don't think anyone's done a study or anything, but this is certainly the word on the street.
I mean, you bring up a good point, Julia, actually something that has been discussed. I don't know if anyone's been on our EV equity subgroup in the Colorado Electric Vehicle Coalition, but if you know, I am forgetting this Denver council person's name, maybe Chris Hines. That was something that he noted as someone who utilizes a wheelchair, right? Like these are very heavy. I've charged our office vehicle and it was heavy for me as someone who's able-bodied. The Access Board does have guidelines on, on accessible technologies, something that is, that you can lift very easy. The issue, of course, is, up to the OEMs. to make sure that that technology is accessible, for all, making sure the weight distribution is there. As a state, I don't know how much input we have. But again, you bring up a really good point, Julia, an issue that it's going to persist, especially as folks get older, because disability is not, it's like stagnant, can happen at any time. And so
I see we have just a couple of minutes left. We'll conclude with 2 final slides. So we have other resources linked here. EVco, which is the resource I mentioned earlier. You can learn more about electric vehicles, tax incentives, the utility company rebates, eventually the BXC rebate, and more at evco.colorado.gov. Again, we will be sharing this slide deck with Julia and company after this presentation. And then the EV tax credit eligibility infographic, as I mentioned earlier as well, I think will be of particular interest to at least some of the people on the call. And then definitely check out the EVco social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Again, all of those links are on the slide deck. And then any future programs, information that we have for CEO will be on this CEO Future Transportation Programs page. So we know we've thrown a lot of information at you guys. We hope we made it as clear as we could. And I'll just end it with thank you again for having myself and Zahra. We've got our transportation team email address here on the slide, CEO_transportation@state.co.us. And please, by all means, we want to keep an open channel here. Contact us anytime. And again, thank you. And we hope you guys have a great rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Would you
you.
mind putting your contact information in the chat so we can copy it off?
Absolutely.
Get it directly off the slides. Anyway, thank you very much for that. It's very useful, really helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
yeah, thanks for having us.
Have a good day, guys.
Alrighty, and thanks.
David, when everybody goes away, can you and I stay on together for a minute?
Sure.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for coming. I thought that was very interesting, and we'll have it up on our YouTube channel at some point so you can share it. I kind of want to share, especially that that slide with all the stacked incentives. I don't think most people know about that. It was pretty impressive.
I know
Yeah.
quite a few people that are kind of at that tipping point now that are ready to buy. And I think that's going to be a huge, huge deal. That's why I'm like, can we start this now or do we have to wait till July?
Yeah, I
Okay,
go to,
thanks everyone.
I go to dinner at a restaurant and get, I have the guy that's in charge of the seating and that kind of stuff is looking for a Model S, but he doesn't want a brand new one, or he can't afford a brand new one, or he doesn't want to pay for a brand new one. There are 37 Model S's for sale off of cars.com. Most of them are old, but still in all, they look like they've got some life in them. And, you know, I like the older car anyway. It looks so much better than the new one.
Yeah, I think used EVs are a real bargain now because people want to trade in and buy a new one and get the incentives, but so they're selling a lot of older EVs. I think the prices have come down on them too.
Well, and
Yes.
the NEVI, the fact that you can now, with the NEVI, the rebate, you can get a used car. That's a huge deal. Like I said in the chat, like I've got 211,000 miles on my 2016. I mean, like these cars don't die. And when my daughter's turning 14 soon, but when she's 16, she will be getting an EV. Like, that's a done deal. There will be no more gasoline cars in our house. So it's I'm excited for all of these
Oh, yeah.
cost savings for the used vehicles, because I'll be damned if she gets anything new. As a 16-year-old.
Yeah, hey, these things last a long time, you know, they're pretty reliable. So I think a used EV's maybe better than a new gas car.
Yeah. So